The consultant came in and he said to me, Tracey, you have to really calm down. At 4:30 this morning, we had a lady in here, 24 weeks pregnant on twins, and she lost the two of them. And any woman who's been through it will know that your hormone levels you're up and down anyway.
That's not a way to calm you down.
You down. And I just sat there and I cried. You're in the car coming home and you're looking down at your tummy thinking, they're inside, they're there. We started to drift apart a little bit. I believe after the third one, we started to distance a little bit more. When it came to the raw emotions, we didn't.
You did not communicate with each other.
And they found me in the corner of the living room just crying non-stop. The doctor had come to the house and he explained to my husband what was going on, and he said her body's gone into a shock because we'd had a few back-to-back treatments at that time. So the clinic said to us, right, go home, relax, just spend the weekend, just have a quiet weekend, and we'll see you back here on Monday. We will not ring you over the weekend, but if something drastic happens, we'll ring. So we went home. Saturday morning came, 6:30 a.m, and my mobile phone was ringing, London Clinic on the screen. Picked it up and they said, can you come straight down? We've lost another 2 overnight.
No.
So yeah, we only had 2 left, and they felt that they were better to be implanted on that day. So we drove down, we were down the hospital about 8 o'clock in the morning, and I could feel myself getting quite really agitated because I was gowned up, ready to go in. And it's such a surreal time because you know this is your last attempt. You know that there is no more options after this. And there was one wall between me and my little embryos. And I started getting quite agitated, and the consultant came in. And he said to me, Tracey, you have to really calm down. I thought I was calm, but obviously I wasn't. And he said, you've got a long way to go. At 4:30 this morning, we had a lady in here, 24 weeks pregnant on twins, and she lost the 2 of them.
Oh, no.
And he walked out. And I'm sat there, looked at my husband.
That is not something
You just
would want to hear.
I honestly,
especially when he's asking you to calm down
Yeah.
before the implantation.
Exactly.
And then and especially because I know that 6 is the max attempt you can make.
Oh, it was incredible. And I remember sitting there,
Oh
and
my.
and any woman who's been through it will know that your hormone levels you're up and down anyway.
That's not a
And
way to calm you down.
It's not a way to calm you down. And I just sat there and I cried, and I cried for this lady. That's all I wanted to do in that moment, was to find that lady and just to hold her. And I think when you're going through it, they strategically do the timings that you don't really meet many people when I was going through it. So I remember meeting this, on that day, I remember crying and thinking, how can you actually say that to me? And internally, I was just praying, just give me my little embryos. And I just thought, right, okay, just get back strong again and just take a moment. And we'd agreed, myself and my husband had agreed this time, that we were not going to view them on the screen. And it was incredible, because once you get gowned up and you go into the theatre room, they ask you if you want to see your little embryos being implanted into the womb, which we had done in the first instance. So we'd agreed to say no. We got taken in and we were there ready for the procedure, and they asked if we wanted to see them on the screen, and he said yes. And I looked at him, I was like,
this is not
it's not what we agreed on. But then I stopped and I looked at him and I thought, my husband at the time was a very quiet person, and he didn't really speak up much. And when he did speak up, I knew it was important to him. And this is why, also going through this form of treatment, the men are often forgotten about, I feel. So I knew that was an important thing for him. So we watched them get implanted, the 2 of them, and it is such a surreal feeling that you're in the car coming home and you're looking down at your tummy thinking, they're inside, they're there, they're there. So and this time I did take time off work after the event, after the implantation, because I knew I just wanted to nurture as best as I could. So I took a week off work, Went back to work then after a week, and as anybody knows, you have to wait 2 weeks to do the pregnancy test. And anybody that's gone through it, it is the longest 2 weeks of your life.
Even a 1 day away, it would be like
It's
the
incredible.
longest.
Every day you just think, right, okay, we've got to day 2, fantastic. We've got to day 3, we've got to day 4. So I believe it was day 11, day 12. I was on my way to work and started having severe pains. Started to recognise the pain again and thought, oh, here we go again. Phoned the clinic because I'm sat in the car and something had happened while I was sat in the car, and they said, do you have somebody to drive you down? And I said, no, not really. I said, I'm okay to drive, but the pain was quite severe. Was down, got checked out, and they believe I'd lost them at that point, but we still had to wait the 2 weeks. And then we did another test then 2 weeks later, and I'd lost. So that was the last attempt for us. And it's quite a surreal time, you know, when you're wanting something so desperately, but you're trying to plan your life. And you plan your life at that point for me was, I was, right, if we have children, this will happen. If we don't have children, this is the route we'll take. The baby books were underneath the bed, and then I was trying not to put them at full view, but you were still wanting to plan your life with children, maybe plan it without children. So it was very much for a few years, the unknown, you know, the unknown. It was difficult to long-term plan at that point, and it was quite painful. So after those 6 attempts, we went to see the consultant, and they said, no, enough is enough. We can't put you through this anymore. And they offered us counselling at that point. But what had happened for us at that point was that my husband was a very deep person. He didn't show many emotions. He'd been through a huge amount of grief himself in his past. So he just got on with life. And when we went for the counselling, we both just went, yeah, we're fine. Yeah, went back at work, and we just had a discussion with them. And the counsellor obviously said, yeah, you two are fine. You can carry on. But we weren't fine.
Of course, no.
We
I mean,
weren't.
so
was
even
so
if as
soon.
much as he did not want it, what I'm getting from, you know, what you said was that he had a little bit of hope, you know,
Yeah.
especially if you're going through 6 rounds of IVF treatment, right? And he agreed, even though he did not want to agree. So I want to know that, how did you feel after every round of IVF treatment? Did you have it in your mind that, you know, it's okay, we can do another one?
Yeah, that's a very important question, and I think this is a question that many people might resonate with, or people who are deciding to go down that route. One of the biggest things for me in between every session, we ended up having 3 back-to-back, so we didn't have much break in between the last
Okay.
group. But the first ones we had, we started to drift apart a little bit because I was trying to protect him from the daily injections, the daily drugs, the do's and the don'ts. You know, we had a full fridge of injections. And I just wanted to protect him as much as I could, because I knew he didn't really necessarily want to go down that route. We didn't talk much in between them. And then we found, I believe after the 3rd one, we started a distance a little bit more. We still were fully in love with each other, but we noticed that I started going inwards. I started protecting him. He was protecting me and protecting himself. We were very open in discussing different things, but when it came to the raw emotions, we didn't. And I believe
You did
that
not communicate with
we
each
didn't,
other.
not the struggles. And I'm a very open person, and I don't know whether I even opened up much on those struggles. And we just went into autopilot mode. And I literally buried myself in work. He did the same. But what was interesting, that when we had time at home together, you know, we are having so much drugs pumped into us to enhance all your emotional, all the, you know, the what's going on inside of you, that it does impact the way you feel. And I was such a laid back person, but I would snap. I would just be quite snappy, quite raw with him. And he'd look at me sometimes thinking, where did that come from? And then I'd start crying, going, I am so sorry, I don't mean to be like this. And we accidentally met a couple in the hospital one day. Well, I did. My husband wasn't with me, and their timings had lapsed over, and I'm sat in the reception area with them, and I could see her snapping at her husband, and he was trying his hardest to be all kind, and I just looked at her and I just smiled, and I just went over and hugged her, and she stood up and held my hands. She went, "Thank you so much." And I looked at him, I said, "We don't mean to be like that."
It's just the hormones that are making us crazy.
I know. And then we sat together and had the most beautiful conversation. But when I had a moment with somebody else that was actually going through the same as myself, but when I asked the consultant, I said, "Is there any way?" I said that we can actually support each other, groups of women, as we're going through this. And do you know what he said to me? He said, "We don't do that." He said, because, and I couldn't understand why. And when he explained to me, I got it. He said, "Can you imagine if you were successful and the lady that you've just hugged and had this most beautiful conversation with, she's not successful, but you are. It can really be painful for a lot of people. Hence why my clinic at that time decided not to bring groups of people together. I don't know now whether it's changed or not, but I felt it quite comforting in that moment to be able to hug that lady and just to give her some support in that moment, because it was only us that knew what we were going through.
And I think talking about your pain makes it much lighter, not only for you, but for the other person.
Yes, exactly. Sharing that experience and sharing what was actually going on at that time, and for me as well, in my workplace at that time, we had a spurt of pregnancies, and we had 4 or 5 ladies in my work pregnant at the same time. And it was so difficult for them because, they'd see me coming around the corner and they'd be joyful, and then they'd see me and I could feel their pain for me. So it was quite an emotional roller coaster for the people around you as well, because I don't think we talk much about the family that look after you as well, your extended family, because they're going through it also. Every failed fertility treatment, the pain, they watch you, they go through it with you, and then you're trying to protect them as well. So it is quite an emotional time.
So then how did you try talking to a friend?
I think I buried it, if I'm honest with you, and it came to the point, one of my colleagues, who is one of the most precious people in my life and still is to this day, she grabbed my hands one day and she said to me, "Enough is enough, Tracey. I can't physically watch you go through this pain anymore," because I just kept burying the pain. And in that moment, it was as if somebody had given me the sort of the green light to start to grieve, because I was told we had to grieve. But for me, it didn't make sense, because how can I grieve something that's not in the physical world? And I didn't feel that I was entitled to grieve. So when she said to me, "Enough is enough," because she was watching my pain, I went home that day and I drove the car home. I don't have much recollection of driving the car home. By the time my husband came back, I'd rung my friend. I don't have recollection of that neither. And they found me in the corner of the living room just crying non-stop. So the doctor had come to the house and he explained to my husband what was going on. And he said her body's gone into a shock because we'd had a few back-to-back treatments. There was the emotional overload. So he gave me sort of a sedative, and apparently I cried for 48 hours in my sleep. I was not compos mentis at all. My husband was with me. And then after 48 hours, I started coming round. And then the doctor made another home visit and explained what had happened in the body. So once he explained what had happened in the body, I was like, "Oh, okay, I understand now. I can go back to work." And he was like, "No, it doesn't work like that." He said, your body shut down because you've not processed the emotions. And that was my first time in understanding the power of emotional and the body and the mind. And that was quite a pivotal time for what was about to happen in my life as well. So I stayed off work for about a week, went back into work, and then I buried it again. So a couple of years later, I went to live in Cyprus on the military camp. And at that point, myself and my husband, we'd just grown so apart that we weren't communicating. He'd put himself on night shifts, and when he was coming back from work, I'd already gone to work. When I was coming back from work, he'd already left for work. It was just silent. We stopped communicating.
I mean, of course, this was one of the reasons, but they say that communication is the key, especially to any marriage. If there is no communication, it is. I'd read this one podcast where it said, or it was a TV show, I don't really remember. It said, as long as you're fighting in a marriage, you're like, you can abuse each other, you can scream, you can howl. That means you're still in a marriage.
You're still connected.
You're still connected in a way. That you can still resolve things. But when you stop fighting, when silence takes over, that means the marriage is over.
And that's what happened. And when he eventually came to join me when I was working abroad, we had the conversation after a while, and he just said, I can't do this no more. And I think for me at that time, deep down, I knew that it was also over, but it was just having that conversation. And I mean, 10 years on now, we still get on so well as friends. We didn't really argue. We didn't really shout about anything, but we had the most beautiful conversation when we were ready to have it. And we just realised that we didn't communicate in that manner, and I think for me that was the biggest thing. So when I realised then after a few months that the emotions, the grief started coming up for me again, I thought, right, now I need support with this and do need to find somebody. So I got some counselling on the military base, and first of all I had to get over the guilt of actually sitting in a waiting room with troops that had come back from tour. And I'm sat in a room going, I shouldn't be here. I shouldn't be sat here. This is not fair. They need more, they need this space more than I need the space. And my mind then started going again, going, no, I can't be sat here. But then when I was going into my session, I found quite quickly that they kept wanting to take me back over the events all the time. And I'm a very forward-driven person. And I remember saying to my counsellor after about the 5th or 6th hour, I said, I have so much pain here. I just want to be able to take it out, put it to one side, and learn how to move on with my life.